After we have experienced genuine biblical community in a small group, the thought of anyone leaving that community is very hard. We want to keep what we are experiencing for as long as we can, but the mandate to continue making disciples is clear. The only way to make room for more people to start their personal discipleship journey is by creating new groups for them. We can see the progression from addition to multiplication with the early church. Acts 2:47 says, "Every day the Lord added to their number those who were being saved." For an initial period of your small group, you'll add new group members to the existing group. This will work until the group is at a critical mass and space becomes an issue. You may be able to subdivide for a time, but to make room for new people, incremental addition will have to change to multiplication. We see this critical change in the early church at Acts 6:7. It says, "So the preaching about God flourished. The number of the disciples in Jerusalem multiplied greatly, and a large group of priests became obedient to the faith." They were experiencing exponential growth and had to change their systems and mindset to best minister through that growth. Their addition had changed to multiplication. Multiplying your small group will take time. It may take a few semesters of growth before your group is ready to birth a new group, but the key is to prepare early for that eventual new group launch. The first step toward launching a new group for new people is identifying someone in your group to become a secondary leader or an apprentice. This will be someone who is developing into a mature believer and showing signs of taking ownership in the group. He may not recognize the leadership potential in himself yet, so you'll need to affirm those gifts that you see. I use these 5 steps to develop secondary leaders in my group. Step 1, I do, you watch, we talk. After I have approached my potential secondary leader and asked him to pray about taking more ownership in the group, I will encourage him to watch how I facilitate the next group meeting. We then arrange time, possibly after the meeting, to connect and talk about his observations. This begins the process of modeling what I want him to do. Step 2, I do, you help, we talk. If my potential secondary leader is ready to move on, I ask him to facilitate a portion of the discussion at the next group meeting. I give him the questions several days ahead of time so he can be prepared to navigate through the transitions and potential answers. We again meet afterward to discuss the experience and next steps. Step 3, you do, I help, we talk. The next step for my secondary leader is to facilitate a majority of the discussion while I help where needed. I may still lead through the prayer time at this stage until he's comfortable handling it himself, but we again meet afterward to discuss the experience. If this step goes well, he should be ready to move on to the next one, which is step 4, you do, I watch, we talk. It's now time for my secondary leader to facilitate the entire group experience while I observe as a participant in the group. This can be a difficult experience for me as a leader because that secondary leader will probably lead differently than I would, and that's okay. In fact, it's healthy. It's now time to turn over the reins and begin the process with someone new, which leads to step 5, you do, someone else watches. This process will eventually lead to birthing a new group. The secondary leader can either step out of the current group to lead a new group for new people, or I can turn the leadership of the current group over to him as I step out to launch the new group. The latter scenario can set the secondary leader up for success quicker. He's already comfortable with the current group, and I will be more prepared than him to start over. An important key to developing a leader is the debrief meeting after each step. It'll be tempting to skip it and move through the developmental process, but moving too quickly will set him up for a potential failure. Here are 5 questions to ask as you meet with your secondary leader after each step of the process. 1, what did you observe? 2, how did this step make you feel? 3, what could be done better or differently next time? 4, what can I do to help you successfully lead through the next step? And 5, how can I pray for you? After each of my children were born, we celebrated as a family. After all, it was a joyous event to welcome a new life into the world. That event was worth a lot of cake and ice cream. In the same way, we should celebrate when a new leader is developed and a new small group is birthed out of ours. It will be an adjustment to send off a leader who has just become an integral part of the group, so the group members need to be reminded of the why behind multiplying. A lot of potential secondary leaders are hesitant to step out into the process because of the potential feeling of loss when they leave. The birth of the new group does not mean that fellowship with the leader stepping out will cease to exist. A part of the celebration should be a commitment to continue as a larger family meeting in different locations. That can mean that the two groups continue to stay together for missional projects and fun activities outside of the group time. But you should also continue to meet occasionally with the new leader to coach them through leading the new group. This could start out as a weekly meeting and then switch to monthly as the new leader gains confidence. The opportunity to start over will follow a successful birth of a new group. If you have handed over the reins of leadership to a secondary leader, this is your time to create another generation of disciples. Paul talked about creating multiple generations of disciples in 2 Timothy 2:2. He said, "And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, commit to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." If you look at this passage closely, you see 4 generations of disciples represented. Paul is the first generation. He invested in the life of Timothy, that's generation 2. Then Timothy was to commit what he learned from Paul to faithful men, that's our 3rd generation. And the faithful men are meant to teach others, also generation number 4. The initial group and secondary leader was generation 1 for you. Through that leader in your next group, you will create generations of disciples who will carry the good news of the gospel to multiple others. This is how we will carry out the words of Jesus in the Great Commission. Your small group can literally change the world. That fact is worth the effort and pain of multiplying and starting over. Now, there may come a time when you should consider ending the group instead of multiplying. If that time comes, it's important that you end the group well. Here are a few reasons a group may need to end. Group members are no longer growing spiritually. A group that has been together too long can grow stale and stop moving forward. If group members are no longer taking their next spiritual steps, it's time to consider disbanding. Group attendance has dwindled to just a few members. Keeping meetings consistent will be difficult with just a few people involved. If this is the case, consider helping the remaining members find new groups. You're seeing signs of burning out as a leader. There may be a season where you need to step out of active leadership to take care of your emotional and spiritual health. Try to identify a secondary leader to take over the group before disbanding in this case. The group dynamic has become toxic. Groups will sometimes need to disband if gossip and discord have taken over the life of the group. Involve a pastor or a church staff member in the ending to help the group heal after a bad experience. For even more ideas and tips on how to prepare to multiply your small group, check out the book Leading Small Groups: How to Gather, Launch, Lead, and Multiply Your Small Group.